The argument from fine-tuning. Of all the arguments for the existence of God, the argument for the apparent fine-tuning of the universe is one of the most compelling, at least on the surface. It has an initial appeal. In the end, though, it's just another version of the argument from design, the evidence evoked in this case being the constants and laws of the known universe. Robin Collins, Distinguished Professor of Philosophy and Chair of the Department of Philosophy at Messiah University in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, states the argument in short as follows. The universe exhibits a stunningly precise balance of physical constants and laws necessary for life. This fine-tuning is extraordinarily improbable, making the hypothesis of design more reasonable than mere chance. First of all, it's not entirely clear to me that the universe is particularly favourable towards the emergence of life. It's actually very hostile to life for the most part. There are a great many factors that make life even less probable than Collins probably imagines. There are lots of obstacles in the way of life, even in this universe. If I were to look objectively at the universe from the outside, I'm not sure I would regard it as particularly favourable for the rise of life. I'm not at all sure that I would conclude that this was the purpose of this universe. What I would say is that life in this universe has a very low probability, but the universe itself is big enough and lasts long enough that occasionally life does indeed arise. We happen to be one of those instances. But the argument about fine-tuning isn't really about life at all. It's about the fact that the universe holds together, that it neither infinitely expands outwards without forming complex structures, nor collapses back in on itself too quickly. One of the things that this ability to form complex structures and this extension in time permits is the emergence of life. I'm not entirely convinced that the set of constraints and laws that govern this universe are the only ones that would allow this to happen, let alone that it's the best set of rules for allowing this to happen. I'm not just talking here about tweaking one of the laws this way or another. Maybe all of the laws could be tweaked to find a new balance, creating an even better environment for life. Maybe entirely new laws could be introduced that we can't even conceptualize. Maybe it could be entirely different in every respect. We simply have no way of knowing. The fine-tuning argument tends to drift into the best of all worlds arguments too. If God wanted life to arise, this universe that he has created is the very best way to achieve that, even though it's clearly so very hostile to life in other respects. But we simply do not and cannot know that. There may be many, even better ways to achieve this. We can't argue from the existence of this universe to the claim that it's the best way to achieve this. It may be a very inefficient and wasteful way of achieving this. And if that's the case, we can't argue to an omnipotent or omniscient creator. Even if this argument did point to design, it may not be a very good design. We have nothing to compare it to. But now let's consider the question of whether this fine-tuning is evidence of design at all. The universe has to have some sort of rule, some sort of structure that allows for our existence, because we do in fact exist. But is this by design or just by chance? Well, first of all, I think even within this universe, life arises largely by chance. Occasionally, the conditions are favourable for life. We don't know how often this occurs because we don't know what other life is out there. But there is clearly chance involved in this process. But the fact that the universe has all these properties actually doesn't remove the role of chance in the rise of life. It may make it somewhat more probable just simply by being big enough and by lasting long enough. But the actual rise of life and of us may still, by and large, be a matter of chance, and most likely is. But is this fine-tuning evidence that the universe itself doesn't exist just by chance? Well, perhaps the universe is just one of a vast number of universes. Maybe universes pop into existence all the time. Maybe that's just how the larger reality actually works. If I wasn't starting with some initial idea of God, would I think that this was unusual or unlikely, this coming into being of universes? I don't think so. Perhaps initially human beings in a particular tribe thought they were the only people in the world and that the world was just a few miles wide in every direction. But as they expanded outwards, the world grew with their understanding of it. And it continued to do so until it included the vast expanse of the universe. But why stop there? We've made that mistake before, thinking that the whole of reality was contained in what we could observe. Why should it be? If this universe exists, why should there not be others too? Maybe all kinds of universes exist, some of which allow for the rise of life of one kind or another, and perhaps most of which don't. We happen to be in one that does. From within this universe, this may indeed seem highly improbable, but to an external observer, maybe not so much. This multitude of universes may exist simultaneously or consecutively or maybe both, although the reference to time is problematic since time is a property of this particular universe and may not exist outside it or even within other universes. If I were discussing this with a theist, I would say, I know that this universe exists. Why not others? And why not many of them? You're asking me to believe in an entirely different kind of thing, an entirely different kind of being, something I've never seen and have no experience of, that you call God. Another kind of being entirely, which by your definition is not of the type universe. You're asking me to believe that this being is entirely unique and that this universe too is entirely unique. Two entirely unique and entirely different kinds of beings. And only that. There's nothing more. Well, I see this universe around me. This I know. Why not a whole bunch of them, like and unlike this universe in various ways? In my experience, there's never just been one of anything, so why should there just be one universe? But even setting aside the possibility of a multitude of universes, perhaps even the laws of this particular universe are not static. There are clearly gaps in our knowledge, as evidenced by the appeal to dark matter and dark energy, for example. We know very little about the universe during its first instant. Perhaps the laws that govern the universe formed during that instant, or maybe even later. Perhaps there were some fluctuations and variations until a stable configuration was hit upon. Maybe just one of many possible stable configurations. Perhaps even now these laws are changing and evolving. Perhaps that's one explanation for the fact that very large galaxies existed long before they were predicted to actually exist. Perhaps that's because the gravitational constant was in fact different then, and may still be changing. Maybe there's an even deeper law governing the rate at which it changes. There certainly seems to be something not quite right about our present understanding of gravity. Of course, this debate will go on, but just in summary, I would say that while the universe does begrudgingly allow for the emergence of life, there's no evidence at all that it's particularly ideal for the emergence of life. It is in fact very hostile to life, or so it seems to me. There may be other universes with other values of the parameters that govern this universe, or even with entirely different sets of parameters that are much better suited to the emergence of life. We just don't know. I can see no reason for concluding that this universe is particularly favourable towards the emergence of life. We may be it, for all we know, and we're only just barely holding on by a slender thread ourselves. So even if we were to admit design, there's nothing to suggest that this is a particularly good design. Certainly not if the goal was the production of life. Finally, even if we were to accept the entire argument, the universe was designed by God and it's the best possible design. Even so, this still only gives us the God of deism. It pushes the button, then settles back in to watch. I hope he's enjoying the show.